I've never done one of these before, so it's going to be even worse, don't worry about it. So I'm just going to talk about pod security standards. These are for those people who are getting started, essentially. This is about the native enforcing of security standards, and I'm Drew. Yeah, that is my face, by the way. Yeah, so there's pod security standards. There's three kinds of policies. There's privilege, which is basically unrestricted. It means you can go nuts on your security and just don't do that, but you can do that. There's also a baseline policy, which basically is the default, and that allows you to have minimally restrictive kind of defaults in place for your pod security. And then there is also restricted, which is heavily restricted, which is ideally what you should be using where possible, because it follows the current pod hardening best practices. Okay, so there is a way of applying them. We do them via labels, which I'll show you in just a second. But essentially what we've got is this pod security admission controller, and we can enforce the policy, which basically means the pod will be rejected instantly and will not be allowed to be deployed to the cluster. There is also the audit, which will basically add an annotation to the audit log, and you will see it in there, and you can go, hey, someone's trying to do something naughty here. But it will essentially allow the pod to be deployed. Okay? And then finally there is warn, which will just chuck an error up onto the console for the user saying, these things have gone wrong, you should probably look at fixing them. So, how do we do it? Namespaces. It's done at the namespace level. You just apply for your labels. You don't have to do all of these, but this is kind of just an example of all of them you can do. So you can set pod-security.kubernetes.io/enforce, warn, or audit, and then you specify the version as well. So it can be the current Kubernetes minimum version, so for example 128, or you can just put latest, which will use the latest, funnily enough. So here we've got enforcing the baseline, so we'll be allowed to deploy most pods basically, unless we really do something naughty. And everything else will be logged as restricted. So we'll see it on the console, and it will also go to the audit log. I don't know why I'm looking there when it's over there. So here's a very naughty pod. This is definitely a safe pod. It lives in the Lightning namespace, and you can see I've just done this today, by the way. And it's got a security context down there of privileged equals true, which, as we all know, Nginx definitely needs. So this will fail straight away, saying, nope, you're not allowed to do that. The container Nginx must not set the security context of privileged equals true. And basically, this can be done at the pod or container, which we'll see in just a second. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I've just removed that line. That's all I've done. Just removed the security context altogether. So it's just a default deployment. And, oh, wait, dang it. This is not what we wanted. Now we've got a bunch of other errors. So we can see we've got loads of stuff coming up there. You can quickly read that if you want, or go to the video online and pause it and read it. But basically, there's a bunch of stuff that are security context here that we should probably consider doing as part of the restricted policy. So on to the next one. Let's go and add all those. We've got security context at the top for the pod, which is to run as non-root. And we've got a seccomp profile, which I'm not going to get into today, but it's about syscall, so, And then we've got a few security contexts down at the container level, where we're allowing privilege escalation set to false, and dropping all capabilities apart from the netbind service, because we have a container port of 80, which is a privileged port, as some of you may know. But we're going to create that, and that's it, right? That's okay. No, because Nginx likes to run as root, annoyingly. So, it's fine. There's some privileged processes in Nginx, and that's fine, but it's now going to fail because we've basically dropped all the capabilities. We're saying we're not allowed to run as root, and Nginx wants to run as root. So let's go and have a look at it again. We've got an Nginx unprivileged container, and this is where you need to think about what kind of stuff your pods and containers need, basically. Does it need to run as privileged, Thankfully, Nginx supply this, which allows it to run as unprivileged, and it runs on port 8080, if I remember rightly. That's why I threw that in there. And the rest of the security contexts are still in place. So, in theory, this should be okay. Which it is. Hooray! We've got a deployed pod and container, and there it is all running. The logs are looking good, and everything's okay. So, what you need to think about when you're deploying stuff is, are these, the root privileges needed? Does it need to run on privileged port? Does the file system really need to be written to, or can you maybe mount a volume in there to do the stuff that you need to do there? So think about how you can adjust your container images, and things like that, and try and lock it down as much as you can, because security is always the last thing on people's mind for some reason, and it shouldn't be. And is there another way? Yeah, there is. There's Open Policy Agent. You've probably heard about that. People have mentioned Kubernetes today. And there's Kubewarden as well, which I've not played with yet, so I'm not going to pretend to know anything about it, but that is another one. And that, I think, is me. Oh, I made it. 29 seconds left. Brilliant, look at that. Oh, I ramble on YouTube as well. There you go, shameless plug. So have a look on there if you want. There you go.